realized that they were available. And he'd formed a new course.
For every midnight flight Elvis Presley flew, he trusted very few people. And one of them was the man flying him through the dark sky. Most flights were routine, logged, and forgotten. But one night was different. The records vanished while the details were buried, and the pilot stayed silent for decades. Now, he says that silence protected something the public was never meant to see. So, what really happened during that secret midnight flight, and why did it disappear forever? The man who kept the secret. There is a man who lives in a small house at the edge of a quiet town. His name does not appear in magazines. His face is not on television. If you walk past him at the grocery store, you would not know that he once flew through the sky with one of the most famous people in the world. He is old now. His hands shake a little when he pours his morning coffee. His hair has turned the color of winter clouds. At night, when the world goes to sleep, he sits in his favorite chair by the window and stares out into the darkness. Sometimes he does not move for hours. He just sits there, thinking about something that happened a very long time ago. This man was a helicopter pilot. Flying was what he did best. He learned to control those giant spinning machines when he was young and strong. He loved the feeling of lifting off the ground, watching the earth get smaller beneath him. He was careful and quiet. He never bragged. He never told stories about himself at parties. He simply did his job and went home. But there was one person he flew more than anyone else. One person whose trust he earned. One person whose life he became a small, invisible part of. And when that person died, the whole world cried. Except this pilot. He could not cry. He could only remember. For many years, people asked him questions. Reporters knocked on his door. Strangers called his phone. They wanted to know what it was like. They wanted stories. They wanted secrets. But the pilot always said the same thing. No thank you, I have nothing to say. And then he would close the door. He was not rude, he was just loyal. Loyalty was built into him, like bones are built into a body. When someone trusted him, he did not break that trust. Not for money, not for attention, not even when everyone else was talking. But time does strange things to a person. It makes you think about what will happen when you are gone. It makes you wonder if silence is the same thing as truth. And as the pilot grew older, something began to change inside him. The secret he carried started to feel heavier. It pressed against his chest when he lay down to sleep. It whispered to him in the quiet moments. He began to ask himself a question he had never asked before. What if keeping quiet was the wrong choice? What if the truth mattered more than a promise? He was afraid not to be hurt, not being called a liar. He was afraid of what people would think. He was afraid of upsetting a memory that the whole world loved. He was afraid that speaking would make him a traitor. But the fear did not stop the memories. They came to him every night. One memory more than any other. One flight, one moment. One decision that changed everything. It was not a long flight. It was not dangerous. But something happened that day that he has never been able to forget. Something that made him question everything he thought he knew. Something that still makes his heart beat faster when he thinks about it. He has told no one. Not his wife, not his children, not his closest friends. For decades he has carried it alone. And now, as his body grows weaker and his days grow fewer, he wonders if the secret will die with him. Sitting in his chair, staring into the dark, the pilot makes a decision. It is not an easy decision. It is not a happy one, but it is the only one he has left. He decides to speak, not because he wants fame, not because he wants money, but because he is running out of time, and because some truths are too big to bury forever. The man who kept the secret for so long is finally ready to tell it, but even now, his voice is quiet. Even now, his hands shake. Even now, he wonders if he is doing the right thing. He does not know what will happen when people hear his story. He does not know if they will believe him. He does not know if they will forgive him for waiting so long. But he knows one thing. The flight he remembers, the one that haunts him, the one that never truly ended, must finally be spoken about. Because silence, he has learned, is its own kind of lie. And so, he begins. Inside Elvis's private sky. The first time the pilot met Elvis Presley, he did not scream or ask for an autograph. He simply shook his hand and said, "Yes, sir." That was exactly why Elvis chose him. Elvis did not want a fan. He wanted a professional, someone who could keep his mouth shut and his eyes on the sky. Someone who understood that flying the king of rock and roll was not about excitement. It was about trust. The pilot had been flying helicopters for years. He had flown important people before, but this was different. Before he got the job, men in dark suits came to his house. They asked him questions, lots of questions, about his family, about his friends, about whether he liked to talk. They wanted to know if he could keep secrets. The pilot told them the truth. He was not a talker. He never had been. A few days later, the phone rang. The voice on the other end said Elvis would like to meet you, and that was how it started. Elvis had rules, simple rules, but they were not suggestions, they were laws. Rule number 1 was never tell anyone where we go. Rule number 2 was never tell anyone what we talk about. Rule number 3 was always be ready. Sometimes Elvis called at midnight. Sometimes he called at 3 in the morning. The pilot had to be awake, he's dressed, and in the helicopter in 20 minutes. No excuses, no complaints. Elvis loved flying at night. When the sun went down and the crowds went home, he would call the pilot. "Let's go up," he would say, and they would lift off into the black sky, leaving the world below. Up there, everything was quiet. The noise of fame disappeared. The screaming fans were gone. The cameras were gone. It was just the sound of the helicopter blades cutting through the air and the lights of the city glowing like tiny stars beneath them. Elvis did not talk much during these flights. Sometimes he would stare out the window for an hour without saying a word. Other times he would hum softly to himself, working on a melody that only he could hear. Once in a while, he would ask the pilot questions. "Where are you from? Do you have kids? What do you think about when you fly?" The pilot always answered truthfully, but briefly. He knew Elvis was not looking for conversation. He was looking for peace. And peace, for someone like Elvis, was hard to find. The pilot learned things about Elvis that no one else knew. He learned that Elvis hated being alone, but also hated being surrounded. He learned that Elvis was restless, always searching for something he could not name. He learned that Elvis was kind. When they landed, Elvis always said, "Thank you." He always looked the pilot in the eye. He never acted like he was better than anyone else. There were no reporters up there, no managers, no contracts. Just sky and silence and the feeling of moving without being chased. The flights became a routine. 2 or 3 times a week, the phone would ring. The pilot would answer, and they would go up. Sometimes they flew over Graceland. Sometimes they flew over the countryside. Sometimes they flew in circles, going nowhere in particular, just staying in the air as long as the fuel lasted. Elvis trusted the pilot. That trust was not given lightly. Elvis had been betrayed before. People had sold his secrets. People had lied about him. People had used his name to make money. But the pilot never did any of that. He showed up. He flew. He stayed quiet. And because of that, Elvis let him close. The pilot never forgot what an honor that was. To be trusted by someone the whole world wanted to touch. To be the invisible man who made escape possible. To hold a piece of Elvis's life that no one else could see. But trust, the pilot would later learn, can be a heavy thing to carry. Because when you are trusted with someone's freedom, you are also trusted with their secrets. And some secrets, once you know them, change everything. For now, though, the flights continued, night after night, week after week, year after year. The pilot and the passenger, moving through the dark together. One man searching for peace. The other man is learning what it means to be loyal. Neither of them knew that one flight, one single flight, would be different from all the others. That one night, something would happen that could never be undone. Something that would stay with the pilot for the rest of his life. But that night had not come yet. For now, they simply flew. What happened in the air? The helicopter climbed higher. The ground disappeared into shadow. The lights from the town below became small and distant, like candles flickering in a church. Inside the cockpit, there was only the sound of the engine and the wind pressing against metal. The pilot kept his eyes forward. There was no looking at Elvis, only focusing on flying, on staying steady, on doing the job. But something radiated from the seat beside the controls. A kind of electricity, a kind of pain. 15 minutes passed in silence. Then Elvis spoke. The voice was so soft it almost disappeared beneath the noise of the blades. "Do you ever wish you could just disappear?" The pilot did not know how to answer. A quick glance revealed Elvis staring straight ahead. The face looked tired, more tired than any previous flight had shown. There were lines around the eyes that had not been there before. Or maybe they had always been there, and the distance had just been too far to notice. Sometimes, the pilot said carefully, but everyone does at some point. Elvis nodded slowly, quiet again. But this time the silence felt different. Something was trying to break through. Words were building up, and there was no way to let them out. The helicopter reached the place Elvis had named, a stretch of empty land far from the city. No buildings, no roads, just trees and open sky. The pilot circled once, looking for a place to land. But Elvis said no. Keep going. Obedience came naturally. The helicopter flew in a wide circle, staying low, staying slow. Elvis looked out the window, a hand pressed against the glass, like reaching for something that was not there. Then talking began, not to the pilot, not to anyone, just talking into the air like confessing to the night itself. Words came about being tired, so tired that sleep did not help anymore, about being watched every second of every day, about how people thought they knew Elvis Presley, but they only knew the version that lived on stage. Words came about pills, about doctors who gave things to wake up, and things to fall asleep, and things to keep going when the body wanted to stop. Words came about being lonely in a room full of people, about feeling like a prisoner inside fame itself, about wondering if any of it had been worth it. The pilot listened, no interruptions, no questions, just flying and letting Elvis speak. And then Elvis said something that made the hands on the controls go cold. How much longer can this go on? The words hung in the air, not loud, not dramatic, but carrying a weight that crushed everything around them. The pilot wanted to say something, anything, to tell Elvis that it would be okay. That strength remained, that love surrounded everything. But the words stuck because the truth was uncertain. Elvis leaned back against the seat, eyes closed. A single tear ran down the famous cheek. The pilot saw it. That tear was not supposed to be witnessed, but it was. Flying continued like that for another 20 minutes, circling, drifting, going nowhere. Elvis did not speak again, just sitting there with eyes closed, breathing slowly, like every breath required a decision. Finally, Elvis opened those tired eyes. A look came toward the pilot, and for the first time that night, real looking happened. Like trying to memorize a face, like trying to remember what trust felt like. Take him back, Elvis said quietly. The helicopter turned around, flying back the way they came, back toward the lights, back toward the world that would not let Elvis rest, back toward the life that was swallowing everything whole. When landing came, Elvis did not move right away, sitting in the seat, staring at nothing, then turning toward the pilot and saying 2 words, "Thank you." A nod came in response. Elvis climbed out of the helicopter and walked toward the car waiting in the dark. No looking back. The door closed, the car drove away, and the pilot remained alone in the silence, sitting there for a long time. No starting the engine, no movement, just replaying everything Elvis had said, every word, every pause, every tear. And knowing came. Knowing that what had been seen was not meant to be shared, that this flight existed in no logbook, that no one would ever ask about it, that it would live only in memory and in the broken heart of the man who had just walked away. The erasure. The next morning, the pilot sat at his kitchen table with a cup of coffee and a blank flight log. This was routine. After every flight, he wrote down the details. The time they left, the time they returned, the destination, the passenger, simple facts that proved the flight had happened. He picked up his pen. He wrote the date, he wrote the time, he started to write the location, then he stopped. Something told him not to finish. Something told him to wait. An hour later, his phone rang. The voice on the other end was calm, professional, not the voice he usually heard. This was someone new, someone from the office, someone who managed things. The voice said there had been a mistake. The flight last night was not supposed to happen. There was no authorization, no clearance, no record of it in the system. The pilot said nothing. He listened. The voice continued. Sometimes flights get scheduled by accident. Sometimes people make calls they should not make. Sometimes things need to be corrected. The best thing to do, the voice said, is to forget about it. Do not file a log. Do not mention it. It never happened. The pilot asked why. The voice did not answer the question. Instead, it said, "This is how we protect everyone. This is how we keep things smooth. This is what loyalty looks like." Then the phone went dead. The pilot sat there for a long time. He looked at the page in front of him, half finished, half true. He thought about completing it anyway. He thought about writing down everything. The fear in Elvis's eyes, the hand on the door, the words spoken in the dark, but he did not. He tore the page out of the book. He folded it once, twice, 3 times. Then he put it in his pocket and walked outside. He stood in his backyard and held a match to the paper. He watched it burn. He watched the ash fall to the ground and disappear into the grass. The flight, officially, never happened. Days passed. The pilot waited for another call. He thought Elvis might reach out, might say thank you, might explain, but the call never came. Weeks passed. The pilot went back to work. Other flights, other nights. Everything returned to normal. Except it did not feel normal. Every time the phone rang, he wondered if it was about that night. Every time he saw Elvis, he searched his face for some sign of recognition. But Elvis acted like nothing had happened. He was polite. He was kind. But he never mentioned the flight. It was as if the night had been erased from his memory too. The pilot began to understand how the system worked. There were no threats, no guns, no men in dark suits telling him to stay quiet. It was quieter than that. It was the silence itself that kept him trapped. The silence that told him speaking would make him the problem. The silence that reminded him of loyalty was the only currency that mattered. One afternoon, the pilot went to the office to pick up his schedule. He saw his logbook sitting on a desk. He opened it. He flipped to the date of the flight. The page was missing. Not torn, not marked, just gone. As if it had never been there at all. He looked at the woman behind the desk. She smiled at him. She said nothing. She did not need to. The pilot closed the book. He walked out. He never asked about the missing page. He never filed a complaint. He never told anyone what he had seen, because he knew. He knew that some truths are not allowed to exist. Some moments are too dangerous to remember. Some flights are erased before they even land. And from that day forward, the pilot carried the weight of the flight alone. Not in a logbook, not in a file, but in his chest, in his mind. In the part of him that could not forget, even when the world told him to. The flight had been erased from history, but it had not been erased from him. And as the years went by, that erasure became heavier than any record ever could have been. Because silence, he learned, is not the absence of truth. It is the burial of it. And the pilot had just helped to dig the grave. Did he later speak out? Why he finally spoke, the pilot is 78 years old now. His wife passed away 3 years ago. His children have families of their own. They visit on holidays. They call on Sundays. But most days, he is alone. Alone with the memory. For 47 years, he carried the secret. He carried it through weddings and funerals. He carried it through birthdays and quiet mornings. He carried it while the world moved on and Elvis became a legend instead of a man. He carried it even when it felt like the weight would crush him. There were nights when he woke up gasping. Nights when he dreamed of the helicopter rising into the dark sky. Nights when he saw Elvis standing at the door, looking out into nothing. In the dreams, the pilot always tried to stop him. He always reached out, but he was never fast enough. And Elvis always fell. When Elvis passed away in 1977, the pilot thought the secret would die too. He thought that maybe, finally, he could let it go. But death did not erase the memory. It made it louder. Because now Elvis could not speak for himself. Now the truth belonged only to the pilot, and that felt even heavier than before. People asked him questions after Elvis died. Reporters, writers, fans who wanted to know what Elvis was really like. The pilot always said the same thing. He was kind. He was talented. He was a good man. And then he would walk away. He told himself he was protecting Elvis, protecting his memory, protecting the version of him that the world wanted to keep. But deep down, he knew the truth. He was protecting himself from judgment, from doubt, from the fear that no one would believe him. Years passed, the world changed, new music came, new stars rose, Elvis became history, a name in textbooks, a costume at Halloween, a voice on oldies radio. And still the pilot stayed silent. But silence, he learned, is not the same as peace. He began to wonder what the point of loyalty was, if it meant burying the truth. He began to wonder if keeping quiet had helped Elvis or hurt him. He began to wonder if the people who erased that flight had done it to protect Elvis or to protect themselves. And then one day, sitting in his chair by the window, the pilot realized something. He was running out of time. His hands shook more now. His breathing was harder. His body was telling him what his mind already knew. Soon, he would be gone. And when he was gone, the secret would be gone too. No one would ever know what happened that night. No one would ever know what Elvis said. No one would ever know that he stood at that door, his hand on the handle, looking out into the darkness like he wanted to disappear. And the pilot decided that was wrong. Not because he wanted attention, not because he wanted money, but because Elvis deserved to be remembered as he truly was. Humans, fragile, struggling, real. So he spoke, not to a newspaper, not to a television show, just to a few people who would listen. He told them about the midnight flight. He told them about the fear in Elvis's eyes. He told them about the door. He told them about the words, but he did not tell them everything. There are some things he still keeps to himself. Some moments are too private. Some words are too sacred. Because even now, even after all these years, loyalty still means something. He does not know if people believe him. He does not know if it matters. He only knows that he could not die with the secret locked inside him. He could not let Elvis disappear twice. Now, in the quiet of his small house, the pilot sits by the window and looks out into the night. He thinks about all the flights, all the nights in the sky, all the times Elvis trusted him to take him away from the world. And he thinks about the one question he has never been able to answer. Could he have saved him if he had said something that night? If he had landed the helicopter and refused to fly until someone helped? If he had broken his silence, then instead of now, would it have made a difference? He does not know. He will never know, but he knows this. The flight happened. Elvis was hurting, and someone should have helped him. The pilot told his story not to solve a mystery, not to create scandal, but to say one simple thing. Elvis was real. His pain was real. And pretending it did not exist does not honor his memory. It buries it. The pilot is old now, tired, ready for whatever comes next. But before he goes, he wants the world to know. That night in the sky, Elvis Presley was not a king. He was just a man who was afraid, a man who was drowning, a man who needed help, and the world was not listening. So, what do you make of the confession that quietly rewrote Elvis Presley's final years and revealed the heavy price of fame behind closed doors? Was it protection, control, or fear that erased the truth?